thank you for joining this video. Can you explain a bit about your role in the Visual Studio team?
Yes, thanks for having me on. Yeah, my name is Mads Kristensen. I work on Visual Studio, and I have for the past 15 years as a product manager. And before I joined Microsoft, I worked as a developer using Visual Studio and .NET for about 10 years. So my total runtime with Visual Studio is 25 years. So I haven't been from the very beginning, but almost. Visual Studio is 28. So
yeah, it's quite close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of the junk drawer of Visual Studio. Is how I like to see myself. Like I'm involved in a little bit here and a little bit there, and yeah, oversee kind of various aspects of the community work and shipping the product and the quality and bringing feedback from the users back to the product teams and develop those features that everybody is so happy about. When we build the features that they actually ask for. So. I might have had something to do with that if you've had one of those feature requests fulfilled. So yeah, that's kind of what I do.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And kind of a strange question, perhaps, but I do work with a lot of junior developers and youngsters, and I always hear them, well, we use Visual Studio Code, and I really don't understand why you as a senior really want to use Visual Studio. Well, and just like you, I've been using Visual Studio for as many years as I can remember, probably around the same number of years as you have, way back to the Visual C++ time, when it wasn't even integrated, when C# wasn't even a thing. And of course, I always give them some advice, but it would be great. What would you say to a junior dev? Why would you invest time to get to know Visual Studio?
Well, that is a great question. So I use both. I think both have their place. So I think one way to answer it is to look at why is Visual Studio? What's the point of Visual Studio when other IDEs and editors exist? So Visual Studio is the mission of Visual Studio. The reason that Visual Studio exists is to create the most lovable developer experience for C# and C++ developers. And so if you're writing C# or any .NET language actually, or C++, the premier place to be, the place where you're going to be the happiest, most productive, is going to be Visual Studio on Windows. Now, if you're not on Windows, you can't use Visual Studio. VS Code is your second best option. If you don't use C#, let's say .NET or C++, then VS Code is going to be your best option for stuff like Python, JavaScript, TypeScript, and other things like that. And so it's like the right tool for the job. If you're on Windows and you want to write C#, definitely go for Visual Studio. It is by far going to be the best experience that we got. It is what we call the premier. It is where we put all the new features first. It's the most rock solid, most tested, most feature rich thing that exists in the world for C#. So and for any .NET really and C++. So that's the answer. I don't know if your juniors are they on a Mac, for instance? Then VS Code is the right option.
It's on a Mac, on Linux, on Windows, on all kinds of different platforms. But they start using, especially when they are still in university, they use a lot VS Code, and they come into the working. VS Code is a great editor, and it really is a great editor, and I use it on a daily basis as well. But if I really have to do some heavy lifting coding, my go-to environment is Visual Studio.
Yeah, and the same is true for me. But there are some situations where I use VS Code for a bunch of other things too. Like if I want to just open certain file types and I need kind of a text editor, VS Code is great, absolutely great. But when I'm down programming, nothing beats Visual Studio. And I'm a C# developer.
Yeah.
Right? So that's my tool.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing to know for junior devs or even senior devs switching from different environments is that the community is here to help you as well. Yes, it's a big product. Yes, it can be perhaps complex to get to know, but if you have questions, simply reach out. And there are so many developers in the .NET community are quite willing to help you get to know the product. And if you run into trouble, the community is here to help. So it may be a learning curve, and yes, it is, but it's really truly worth the effort of putting your time in it and getting to know the product.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how I look at it too. But we're all different, and you choose whatever makes you happy.
True. Definitely.
So.
Okay, thank you. Well, another question. Visual Studio, of course, has changed a lot over the years, and I've had the chance to use and play around with the preview version already, and I'm quite impressed with the overall speed improvements. Name for the next version of Visual Studio.
Sorry, you fell out in that question. Can you repeat that?
Sure. Visual Studio has changed a lot over the years, and I've used the preview version. I've had the chance to use it, and I'm really proud of it. And it's really a very fast, way faster environment than it was in the 2022 version. It was still a bit of a discussion. What will it be named? Some title it. What will be the new name for the product?
Well, we've gone back and forth, and the new name is Visual Studio 2026. So we're almost 2026, not quite yet the year, but that's what we're going to call it. So it's now 4 years after 2022. And we know the issue with having the year in the name. As soon as that year is over, that name is going to seem old. We're fully aware. But we have something more to share in a few weeks' time. So stay tuned. There's meanings to the madness. This time around, it might be a little bit different than what you're used to. And the having the year in the name is going to make a little bit more sense than it otherwise would have, or it has in the past, let's say. Because it is kind of an issue, right? We have 2022, yet for Visual Studio 2022, we've had 14 major updates. And after we moved to monthly updates in June, in the early summer, we've had almost 4 of those. We have the 4th one coming out here. And so we've had 14 plus 4, 18 updates. There's nothing old about Visual Studio 2022, right? It's been maintained, it's up to date, it's up to speed. It is very highly capable. So it is a little bit unfortunate that the name make it sound like it's old. But here we are. So, but anyway, 2026, and we're very excited for it. I'm glad that you noticed the performance improvements. That is one of the major things that we've been looking at, and also one of the major things that people have been asking for. So we're very happy that to finally be able to address some very hard problems, because Visual Studio is a huge app, and so nothing is just fixing something or just make it faster. It is always a very complex situation, and I'm very happy that we got around to change that architecture, infrastructure, and all that stuff deep down in the core of Visual Studio to make it happen.
Okay, thanks. And yeah, I know the discussions. I've had them in the working field as well with customers when I want to use Visual Studio, and they say, well, okay, is it still current? Yes, it's still current, even though that the year is part of the name. It doesn't mean that nothing changed over the last few years. A lot has changed.
Yeah.
Okay, and well, if you start up the new version, one of the things that immediately catches, of course, your eye is the new look and feel. And can you give some insights on the most important changes that have been made to improve the developer experience for Visual Studio?
Yes. The first thing you will see is the new absolutely gorgeous Fluent UI design language that is now fully implemented new icons, like 4,000 new icons, right? We have Visual Studio ships a lot of icons. They've all been updated. Crisp lines, more space where you need it, like space between menu items and less space in other places. So really optimized for both touch and mouse and all of it. And it feels modern. So sometimes Visual Studio, just it is 28 years old, and some things in Visual Studio are older to look at. And having this brand new fluent design kind of everywhere really makes a difference. It makes it feel great. And when you match that up with the performance gains that we've seen, so we moved a lot of stuff away from the UI thread, so that it's very rare now that Visual Studio will freeze. That's you take an action and Visual Studio becomes unresponsive in like half a second or a second, 5 seconds, sometimes longer, depending on what you're doing. That no longer happens. We moved a bunch of stuff to the background thread, probably running on .NET Core in a separate process. And so you are having this very lightweight feel because everything is responsive all the time. So the feel of it, the new UI with the faster, more responsive performance makes it feel like a lightweight program. It's kind of fascinating how that is something you sense it when you use it. The first time it's very apparent, and then it just becomes normal, and it's like this delightful feeling of using a tool that's responsive and fast and fluent. And it's I think that's most people are going to see that immediately and be absolutely thrilled by that. That's a huge thing.
Yeah, definitely. Once I started using the preview version, I didn't want to switch back to the 2022 version. So, and yes, sometimes you do have to, but I was quite reluctant. I really love to stay in this version. So if you haven't tried it, do give it a try, because it really is a great new version. Okay, and of course, software development, the entire industry is all about AI and code generation. And of course, GitHub Copilot has been a part of Visual Studio, the 2022 version. But how is this improved in the new version?
Yeah, so yeah, absolutely right. AI is kind of everywhere. It's taken over, but we want to make sure we have a balanced approach to it. It's where Visual Studio has a bunch of features everywhere, and it's not just all AI. Some people think that, we've dropped everything else we're doing and only do AI. That is not the case. It's all about balance. We want to make everyone productive. People that want AI and people who don't, and people who want a little bit AI over here, but not over there, and so on and so forth. So with this new version, we are doing something that's kind of unique to being an IDE. Like, this is not something you'll see from a lot of other editors and IDEs out there, but something unique to Visual Studio, which is we can now go very, very deep into Visual Studio and the various areas inside Visual Studio and build Copilot into those, whether it's debugging, unit testing, profiling, all these advanced concepts. We can add that into the context so that the LLMs now have a very broad set of things it can do, and then it knows about, and then it can execute. So it can now help us with things that otherwise would have been completely impossible. And so this is foundational work. It's work that we put in, and we have one feature out of the box, out of the gate here with the first preview that you can use that uses that kind of new deep integration, and that's the profiler agent. So the profiler, we've had it for years in Visual Studio. It's gotten a lot better over the years and faster and all these things. It's actually an absolute fantastic tool to find performance issues and memory leaks and bottlenecks and whatnot in your applications. But very few people used it. It's in Community, Pro, and Enterprise, yet very few people use it. And the ones who do, they can see, here's my hot paths. Here's where my expensive lines of code are. Those methods are very expensive to call, either because they allocate a lot of objects to memory, or they take up a lot of CPU time, or whatever it might be. And so that's great. Now you know where your issues are from a performance perspective, but that doesn't mean you know how to fix it, right? And so what's really cool about the profiler agent is that it now has information about all the profiling data, and it can give you exact recommendation to how to improve performance. But it doesn't just say, oh, I think it would be better if you do this. No, no, no. It's completely science-based. It can write you benchmarks, add that in, run those thousands of times to really get into the nitty-gritty of each method. And then it uses that data in profiling to then come with very specific things that it will do to optimize the performance. And it'll give you a plan. Here is what I found. Here is what I think you should do. And here is if I run the benchmarks again, this is the outcome. This is the improvement that you'll see in percentage, like, oh, this is 85% faster, or this is, whatever it might be. And so for me, for instance, I don't really know how to go very low level. I don't know how to do unsafe C#, for instance. And so there's a bunch of things that, simply has not been possible for me because my brain doesn't understand it. And so what's really cool about this profiler agent is that you learn as you go along and you get to approve things. So if you see that it's suggesting you do something that you don't understand, you can tell it, hey, I don't understand that. I don't want that solution in my code. Can you come up with a different thing that also improves the performance? And they will then come up with something else that you probably will understand, or you might understand. And then, so you work on this plan together, and then you can tell it to execute it afterwards. Now, what's really fascinating here is it teaches you as you go along. All these different things. Don't use the dictionary in this particular case. Use a hash set, right? And you never thought of that. And maybe you didn't even know what a hash set was. So now you know the next time you're going to use a dictionary, but oh, a similar situation here with a dictionary, I better use a hash set, right? Or something to that effect. So it teaches you as you use this. But that's one aspect. The second aspect is this was not possible for me before. I couldn't optimize performance. I didn't, even though I had the profiler, it wasn't always like great what I did. And I didn't really know, it was not a scientific thing. Like what happened if I made some changes? I could run the profiler session again, and then I would say, oh, now it's no longer as hot of a path as it used to be. But does that mean it's fully optimized? Could I have gone further? And those are the things where it's like, I didn't know. And so it was simply like that door was closed to me. But now the profiler agent can open it. So AI can help me open that door. And it doesn't step through it on its own. I step through it with it, right? We do it together. And I think that's the key here. So it makes the impossible possible. And it brings me along with it and teaches me things. I can now do more. I become a better developer from it. And so I think that's like one of my absolute favorite features. But it's all coming from that foundational understanding or platform update we're adding to 2026 that allows AI to really access everything in the context of Visual Studio, which goes beyond Visual Studio, by the way, right? Could be your issue tracker, could be your database layer, could be your, cloud topology. So it knows all these things, and it can come up with like interesting, never thought of before scenarios and optimizations and whatnot, recommendations. How can you save money on your cloud bill, right? Based on your running Avalon, like it'll be able to do those things because it can tie things together. It's like, oh, if you change this to an Azure function and you use this API, in Azure or something like that, you could save money. Like that would be nice to know, right? But how would you know that kind of before? Because everyone's app is different, everyone's situation is different. So everything is very individualized. But now we can start opening those doors, right? Those impossibilities are now possible. So it's really fascinating. And this is the foundation for it.
Yeah, definitely. I saw a demo. It really is. It works really like a charm. And the profiler was so difficult to work with in the previous version. Yes, I explained it to other developers, but they couldn't grasp it. But I think that's also a very good thing that you mentioned. Do read the lines that Copilot gives you. It does try to teach you things, and do take that as an option or a possibility to actually learn new stuff. So don't simply hit accept, but do read what Copilot does tell you, because you will become a better developer because of it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what it's all about. I think that's the future we're seeing, like with Visual Studio and with AI in general, is you become better and doors open up for you that were not open before. Another example would be debugging. You know, there's a limit to everybody's abilities, and that limit is different from person to person. But like, let's say you want to debug something, and now all of a sudden you come down into like async call stacks, multi-threaded applications, right? And you go low, like to the metal type of stuff. I don't stand a chance. I can't, I don't know how to debug that far down. Okay, and I'm gonna add some modules, and these are native modules, and how do I step through that? And and then you go to a colleague that's like the expert, and they know how to use WinDBG, go really down to all the nitty-gritty stuff, and I'm lost. I don't know how to do that. So it's really nice that now Copilot can open the door and make me understand those things. I no longer have to go to a colleague. Maybe I didn't even have a colleague like that. Maybe I was just stuck. I couldn't do anything about it, right? But now that impossibility is possible. And so that is something I really like, and I learn along the way. And so the combination of the two, the empowerment of the developer and the door opener, that's really, it accelerates our growth basically as developers.
Yeah. Definitely. That's my experience as well. If you take the opportunity to take it as a learning opportunity, then you will definitely grow from it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, you already talked a bit about the profile agent. Well, okay. Visual Studio, of course, switched to a monthly cadence in release. Will this also apply for the 2026 version?
Yes, it will. It will be every month there will be an update. So here in the preview, now we're out in preview. So now you have preview 1, 2, 3, and so on the road to GA, the final non-preview release. After that happens, after that release is out, every month we'll drop an update. And some months will be heavy on AI features. Some months will be heavy on bug fixes. Some months will be heavy on Git tooling. Like it's different what comes in it. It's not like we only do monthly for like AI, for instance, or whatever. It's like you'll see different. Sometimes it's a little bit of everything, but sometimes it's heavy on one thing over the other. And that doesn't mean that that's going to be the true for the next monthly update. It's going to be everything that's coming in, but everything's coming in at a different tempo, right? And a different cadence and so on. So, but that's something we had to do. We had to ship to monthly because, the world is moving pretty fast these days. And, people's expectations are that they expect a faster update cadence. And so, yes, if we want to keep up with the latest and greatest, we have to do monthlies, especially in the world of AI where, before we did monthlies, it was like every 3 to 4 months. Well, that's a eternity when it comes to AI. Like all new LLMs are being, come out and are deprecated in that time, right? And the next one is taken over. So we can't. Yeah, we can't really do that. So we have to be faster.
Yeah, it's even worse than with the old JavaScript frameworks. Normally, when you had JavaScript frameworks, they had a lifetime of a few months. With LLMs, that's even shorter.
Yes. Yep. JavaScript frameworks, build tools and whatnot for Java. Yeah, that's the perfect analogy, right? So we have to move quickly. So that's kind of exciting. So we had to change the way we do our releases and our builds and all that type of stuff. So that was a huge undertaking, and that team has my utmost respect. It's not a small thing to ship probably the world's largest app, or one of them, on a monthly cadence. And that's just for the feature updates. We actually ship Visual Studio 3 to 4 times a week, but we don't ship that to every person. We have many different SKUs of Visual Studio: Community, Pro, Enterprise, Build Tools, Test Platform. There's one more, and not all and you don't have all the components installed all the time. So if there's a security issue in the C++ component somewhere, but you don't have the C++ workload installed, you are a C# developers, let's say, then you won't get an update notification. But we have to ship that update, right? So we make sure that security fixes and bugs are being fixed and stuff like that every week. And so we're actually able to turn around stuff like this very, very efficiently. I marvel at it. It's almost like the speed of web, the way we can release new versions.
Yeah, it's quite impressive, especially if you look at the complexity of the product.
Yeah. I mean, it's huge. We think there's like about 200 million lines of code, but we don't know for sure, but it's something to that effect, maybe.
Well, it's a good one because it does hook up to a question I have. A lot of us developers, of course, do not always work on greenfield projects. Let's be honest, most of development work you simply have to do with an existing code base. Well, of course, Visual Studio is a perfect example of an existing code base. And I know a lot of developers are having trouble maintaining that and keeping it flexible enough and to simply keep shipping new features, new bug fixes, all the things that the customer wants. Can you give those developers this and this into account to be able to keep moving forward? Because rebuilding is, of course, the nicest thing to do, but by far not always feasible.
Yeah, and so we completely recognize this. A huge percentage of our users are maintaining, older or legacy systems, while maybe they also work on the latest and greatest. And so we need to be able to support that full range within Visual Studio. And so we've always taken backwards compatibility very, very seriously. And we don't really deprecate things unless we are certain that hardly anyone is using stuff anymore. So we don't deprecate features very lightly. We do deprecate them, but they have to be ready for deprecation. And there has to be a path for the people who still rely on it to still be able to either download it separately or use a previous version that's still under license or support or something like that. So yeah, you will still be able to use work on your .NET Frameworks 3.5 app in WinForms or whatever. You can still work on that in 2026. And you can work on .NET 10 and C#14 using Aspire and the latest and greatest. It's supported all the way through. For the first time, we're also able to be backwards compatible with your extensions. So this has never happened before with Visual Studio. The extensions that today work with Visual Studio 2022 will all be able to be installed on 2026. Whether the author has updated their extension to say, hey, this now supports the latest version. You'll just be met with a little warning that says, hey, this extension doesn't claim to work with 2026. Do you want to install it anyway? And you can say yes, and it installs, and chances are that it's going to work just fine. We run a lot of extensions through this, and I have yet to see any that does not work. So that's really amazing. That means that you're not blocked because that extension is not ready in time, right? So if you're relying on something to work on your legacy .NET Framework 3.5 application, you're probably in good hands. It'll work. You'll be good. 2026 is yeah.
Yeah, that was the downside of the things, at least that I heard from developers in the past, that they didn't want or could move to a new Visual Studio version simply because they were stuck on the extensions that they are using and they weren't available yet in the new version. But even if Visual Studio 2026 is backwards compatible, can you still use the 2022 version in parallel just to be sure?
Yeah. Absolutely. Just like you can have multiple versions of Visual Studio installed side by side. So the installer, when you install 2026, will update to the latest version, the 2026 version. And that still supports Visual Studio versions down to 2022, 2019. Does it support 2017 maybe? I think.
Yeah, well. 17. And then
so 15, that all exists within the installer. You can modify the components for each of them. You can uninstall them. You can install new ones. Whether it's a preview or it's a stable release, it can all be handled from the installer. And so, yeah, you can totally install them side by side. They won't interfere with each other. If you uninstall one of them, it won't interfere with the others, like remove some components from the others, for instance. And that hasn't changed. That's the same as always. So I highly recommend people to try it because you can download it for free, you can try it for free, and you can install it side by side. So even though maybe it wasn't quite ready because it's the first preview that's out, right? Maybe something wasn't quite there. Well, then you can go back and use 2022 and then just use 2026 for the stuff that you care to try, right? Let's say. So it's a great opportunity for you get that extra performance, get that lightweight feel, get that fluent UI and the profiler agent and the Copilot integration and a bunch of these productivity features that are also in there.
Yeah, and it's also a good opportunity, of course, that if your teammates or your lead is a bit reluctant on getting to use the new version, you can simply install it on your dev box. Do give it a try. Show them the all the nice new features and the performance improvements, and then it's a good chance that they will start moving with you to the new version. So don't be afraid. You can really. I have a lot of versions on my machine as well, for the different preview versions and 2022 in different versions. That really works. Yes, it does take up quite some bit of disk space, but then again, this space is quite cheap.
Yeah. And so since you mentioned DevBox, right? If you run Visual Studio in a VM, whether it's Microsoft DevBox up on Azure, someone on DevTest Lab machine or something, or it's a local VM and you run an RDP session, you'll see even faster experience than you get more than just the performance optimizations. You also get RDP specific optimizations. So that's something we've been working on for a long time. But that's basically the latency has gone down because we no longer update as much of the screen. So when you add a character, the only thing that really needs to be updated and told to the RDP, say, hey, update the UI, is that character and whatever comes to the right of that, if something was moved out, right? You'll say, hey, these are the parts of the screen that you need to update on the RDP. But what Visual Studio did and many other apps do is that they send more, saying, no, it's actually a lot more. So it could be the whole class, the whole visible space in the editor that it says, no, take all these pixels and tell the RDP to update all of it every time you hit a keystroke. That's not efficient. So a bunch of work has gone into like make that as minimal as possible. So now it is kind of only that one letter that you typed, right? And then maybe the rest of the line or something, or maybe the closing curly that comes after it or something to that effect. And so the typing speed and the latency, you'll see that great performance boost for RDP. This is really, so you can kind of get the double effect here.
Oh, perfect. Perfect to know.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's always difficult, but I always like to ask people, but it's sometimes a bit of choosing between your children. What is your personal favorite feature in Visual Studio?
Oh dear. Oh well, I'll give you one of the new ones that I'm really excited about, and that is the new settings. So the new settings is basically just a JSON file. So all the settings now are stored in JSON instead of this weird XML format. And you had this ugly old dialogue. That's now all gone. It's now all like nice themed full screen view of all the settings. And you can override any user setting, any setting you have, and put that override value in your repo or in your solution. So for instance, this is a feature that we've had a lot of requests for over the years, which is I would like to see a visible difference. Like, can I apply a different color theme to different instances of Visual Studio? Because very often you have more than one instance of Visual Studio open. You might have a solution open there and another solution there, and going between them might be hard to identify which is which, like kind of easily, right? Yeah. But now I can override it, so I can apply a different theme to each solution. So whenever I open that solution, the theme changes. So I can have, a red, a yellow, a blue, a dark, a light, green, whatever it might be, and very easily tell them apart. But I can store any setting that way. And so it's just a JSON file that lives by the solution, and that's all. And it just takes over, and you can check it in, and then your teammates will get the same benefit. Or if you don't check it in, then it's just for you, and that's fine too. maybe they don't appreciate your theming, but they might appreciate other things about like how your code is formatted or something like that.
Yeah, and perhaps a good thing to mention as well, because we didn't mention it, there are a lot more themes available in the new version than there were in the past. And one of the things that I really love is that I can change the color of my editor independently to the theme.
Yeah.
And that really sometimes works because, yes, I know there's a lot of discussion with developers who claim, well, if you're not on a dark mode, then you're not a real dev. Yes, but if I do work in bright sunlight and then I work on my laptop screen and the reflection of the sun on my screen will be almost impossible to work with a dark mode. So I really love the ability to pick a theme and being able to switch the color theme in the editor depending on my own preference.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a feature that was highly requested from users as well. So you'll find a lot of features actually here in this 2026 that was requested by users. So in the past 12 months, so we worked on 2026 for quite a while. But if I look back, say the last 12 months, we've implemented 290 feature requests so far. And so that's like 1.2 feature requests implemented per workday. That's quite a lot. And those are just the user requested features, not kind of all the other stuff that we're also looking at. And so that's quite impressive. And so you'll definitely find something in here that you've been like thinking about in the past. Be like, oh, it would be cool if Visual Studio would do this too. Well, now it does, probably.
Yeah. Well, to conclude this interview, do you want to give an advice to the viewers of this video?
Well, an advice, huh? Unsolicited advice. Everybody loves that. Let's see. If I were to say anything, I would, if you haven't tried Copilot yet, because this AI thing is annoying and in your way or whatever, try 2026, give it another look. I think you'll be surprised at how helpful it can be. And in 2026, you can also turn off so it doesn't automatically give you all the stuff in the editor, the auto completion, but it only does that when you hit a keyboard shortcut. So you can kind of bring it back a little bit so it is not so much offering help all the time on its own, but you kind of request the help more. I think you'll be surprised at what you can get out of it and what doors that was previously closed it can help you open. So that's the advice I'll give.
Okay. Well, I would say thanks a lot for this interview. And my advice would also give it a try. It's a really lovely version. So give it a try. Do experiment with it. And as I mentioned before, if you run into trouble, reach out to the community. We're here to help you. But then you will see that it's a great product. And from my personal perspective, the team can be very proud on the accomplishment of a new version because they've done a great job.
Oh, thank you. They'll be very happy to hear that. I'll relay that back to the team. They've been working very hard on this, and they are very proud. This is one of the, if I remember back, I've been here since 2010, so I've seen quite a few releases. This is the first one I remember where there was this much enthusiasm behind it. Like people are just absolutely proud and happy and can't wait to get it into the hands of people. So this is always the case, but it seems like it's higher this year than I've ever seen it before. So they'll be thrilled to hear your review here so far.
More than welcome. Much deserved.
Nice.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Mads.
Well, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.